When you think of consulting, what comes to mind? Probably sharp suits, high-stakes presentations, and some pretty hefty paychecks. It's sold as this incredible fast track for the best and the brightest. But behind all that glamour, there's this powerful machine running in the background. And it's fueled by something a lot darker: burnout. Today, we're going to peek inside that machine.
So let's just kick things off with a quote that, wow, it really makes you think. This comes from an IT consultant over in Japan, Thomas Redu, and his argument is that the very companies promising to shape the future's top talent are actually mass-producing, burnt-out, ineffective professionals. That is a huge claim, so let's see how he backs it up. To really get what he's talking about, we're going to start small. We're going to zoom all the way in and start right there on the ground floor, with this one consultant's super detailed account of how the system is failing its junior people. Then, we'll zoom out and see if this is just happening there or if it's a global problem. He paints this picture of the industry, right? And it's not some meritocracy. No, he calls it a factory. A factory that's specifically designed to pump out what he calls useless consultants. Let's dig into his step-by-step breakdown of how this production line actually works. And this is the key word he uses: ponkotsu. It's a Japanese term, and it basically means piece of junk or useless. And in this world, it's a really damning label for a young consultant who's just been trained to follow a checklist, to execute tasks without ever understanding the why. They can follow instructions, but they can't actually consult. So how does this actually happen? Well, he lays it out like an assembly line. It all starts with the senior managers, who are so overworked they have absolutely zero time to mentor anyone. So they just throw tasks at the juniors with almost no context. The classic just read the docs and get it done. The result? The junior people learn how to do these little, isolated tasks, but they never learn strategy. And the final step on the line? They get ground down by all-nighters on pretty menial work, they burn out, and they quit before they've learned anything truly valuable. And this is where you see the real long-term damage. These consultants, they walk away with a big, fancy name on their resume, but they don't have the skills to back it up. Future employers see that name and have these super high expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, that punkatsu label just sticks, and their whole career can stall out. Okay, so that's a pretty bleak picture from one perspective in Japan, right? But here's the big question. Is this just a Japan thing, or is this burnout machine a global franchise?
Well, it turns out a new international report actually dug into this exact question. They compared the experiences of consultants in Japan, the US, and Germany, and what they found really zooms us out from that one personal story to the big, systemic picture. And to really get the stakes here, just look at this number: 140. That's how many illegal overtime hours a single consultant in Japan worked in 1 month. This wasn't just a tough month. This led to a major firm actually getting prosecuted by the government. It shows you just how extreme this can get. Now let's flip that on its head and look at the US. What's the federal legal limit on how many hours an adult can work per week? The answer is 0. There isn't one. Now that doesn't mean there aren't rules about overtime pay, but it points to a totally different legal mindset about work hours, and that changes everything. And this gets us to one of the report's main takeaways. The pressure cooker vibe in consulting? That's everywhere. But the rules of the game, the legal and cultural operating systems, if you will, they're completely different depending on where you are. So here's the crucial point. The fundamental way burnout happens is the same no matter where you are. But, and this is a big but, how it shows up, whether it's a government lawsuit in Japan, an employee suing for overtime in the US, or someone just quietly quitting in Germany, that all depends on the local rules. Let's break that down a bit. Take Japan. They have strict overtime caps, right? So when things get out of hand, it can literally lead to the government stepping in. Then you have the US with its at-will employment and no federal hour limit. There, the problem often surfaces as civil lawsuits, people suing for unpaid overtime. And Germany? Germany's fascinating. They have super strict daily limits and mandatory time tracking. But then you read reports of people working 60, 80, even 100-hour weeks. So there's this massive gap between the law and reality. See? Same problem, totally different symptoms. Okay, so if the laws and cultures are so different, what's the one thing they all have in common? What's baked into the industry's DNA that leads to the exact same result everywhere? Well, the report says it's basically hardwired into the industry's DNA. It's this perfect storm, you know? You've got these crazy short deadlines, clients with sky-high expectations, and this relentless cycle of project after project. That combo, that's the source code for the burnout machine.
And this is the inevitable result. It's like a row of dominoes. It starts with that intense project pressure that forces people to work insane hours. Those long hours lead to exhaustion. You're not sleeping, you're not recovering, and when you're exhausted, your brain just doesn't work as well. Your performance suffers, you start making mistakes, which just adds more stress, and the very last domino to fall, that's the consultant themselves. They burn out and they drop out.
So, okay, we get it. The machine is real. But the big question for anyone in this field, or even thinking about it, is how do you survive it? Well, if we pull together what we've learned from both the Japanese consultant and the global report, we can actually build a pretty practical toolkit.
All right, so let's look at your survival kit. It's kind of broken into two parts. First, there are the proactive things you can do before you even start. Study the tech on your own time, get up to speed on case studies, and network like your career depends on it. Our Japanese blogger really hammered this point about using alumni connections to build allies. Then, once you're inside, you switch to defense. You've got to find mentors who will actually teach you, not just dump work on you. Keep tabs on your own limits, your sleep, your weekends, and speak up early. And finally, and this is key for places like the US, you have to learn to negotiate for better conditions before you're at your breaking point.
And all of this leaves us with one final, kind of ironic question. Think about it. The entire business model of consulting is built on charging a ton of money to fix other companies' broken processes and dysfunctional systems. But when you look at all this, you just have to wonder, can an industry that gets paid to sell solutions ever really fix its own biggest problem?